Continuing our discussion on adventuring on the high seas, we need to talk about the crew and the officers on board a ship. Hey fellow Game Masters, I'm Richard Quiner, and welcome back to the RPG Daily, your daily dose of all things tabletop role-playing games, helping you build your world and master your game. Today we are talking about the officers and crew that go aboard a sailing vessel that you can use in your high seas adventures through Dungeons & Dragons. Here's my disclaimer for this video. The rules I'm laying out here are the ones that are written up in the Ghosts of Saltmarsh campaign book, adventure book. Not really a campaign. So these rules were created by Wizards of the Coast, but every DM I know of has probably come up with their own way to run high seas adventures and how the ship-to-ship combat and things might work. So take this with a grain of salt. If your DM has not picked up Ghosts of Saltmarsh and read through this, they might run things differently, so you can't go to them expecting them to understand all these rules. Just have an open discussion. Every campaign is a little different, and some DMs may have looked at these rules and said, they're inadequate, I don't like them, and changed them to be something else. So keep that in mind. Also in this video, we're talking about officers aboard a ship. So while these officers are historically correct names of things, possibly the roles that were assigned to them by Wizards of the Coast might not be 100% historically accurate, so keep that in mind also. This isn't a history lesson. All that disclaimer being said, today we're talking about crews of ships. As we touched on the ship stat blocks, all of the ships come with a substantial crew to keep things running smoothly, to fire the weapons, to sail them, this sort of things. But ships also need some officers. These are the individual crew members that keep the crew in high morale. They make the tactical decisions of what the ship is going to do, and a lot of times those become the players. The adventure party becomes these officers on board of a ship. So that's what we're getting into. There are 6 main officers outlined in the books, and of course adventure parties can become them, or NPCs can also do an equally good job at these roles. The first one, and arguably the most vital one aboard a ship, of course, is the captain. This is the crew member that makes the tough decisions. They decide where to go in combat, who to fire at. They basically control the ship, and they keep the crew in line. It's important for a character who is going to be a captain to have a high intelligence and a high charisma, as they're going to be dealing with the crew and keeping them going. It's also highly suggested that they have a proficiency in vehicles, a proficiency in intimidation and persuasion. Next up, you have the first mate, who is kind of in charge of crew morale. They interact with the crew a little more than the captain might. They're going to be providing supervision over the activities of the crew, some discipline if needed, and encouragement in tough times. They are also going to want to have a high charisma and also be proficient in intimidation and persuasion. Next, you have the bosun, which is more of a technical role on board the ship. The bosun kind of leads in the maintenance and repair department of the ship, making sure things are running in tip-top shapes and you don't have any technical issues with the vessel itself. And for that, it's important that the bosun has a pretty high strength, a decent athletics proficiency, you could say, and proficiency in carpenter's tools, as they're going to be repairing the vessel. The quartermaster is the next officer, and in this book it is listed as the navigator. They decide the course that the ship is going to go, they plot the course, they make the survival checks on their way. For this, it's important that the quartermaster have a pretty high wisdom and proficiency in nature and navigator's tools. The next one is the surgeon. The surgeon is kind of the crew's healer or medic that you might think. If you've seen any old ship-to-ship combat war movies, the surgeon is the one who's cutting off limbs, making sure the crew members survive their damage. They know all about the potential risks of being in a high seas fight, the different dangers that come from this different kind of territory versus being in a town where you have all the things you need. The surgeon benefits from a really high intelligence, as well as proficiency in medicine and herbalism. And last up is the cook. Yes, the cook is a officer of the crew. They keep things in high morale, make sure the crew stays happy with everything they're going through by giving them some good food. A cook benefits from a high constitution and should have proficiencies in brewer supplies or cooking utensils. Yes, we briefly ran through all the officers aboard a ship, but there's so much more to go on with the crew itself. Like I mentioned before, each ship has a stat block that tells how many crew members are on board that ship. The crew also comes with a quality score. You could think of this as a happiness rating, or it's a quality score. This quality score shows how good the crew actually is. Are they physically capable of completing the tasks? Are they healthy being on board the ship? Are they happy being on board the ship? All of those kind of go into play of how the crew quality score is determined. The quality score itself is actually used pretty heavily when it comes to rolls that the ship has to make, such as initiative rolls, combat rolls, things like that. The quality of the crew matters. This crew quality score starts off at a base of +4 and runs from a range of +10 to -10. You can get the idea. At the higher the score is, meaning in the positives, the better the crew is and the better chance you'll have at succeeding at things based on the rolls. If you get into the 0 and negatives, it's going to be a negative impact on your rolls and the crew will be less happy. You as the DM get to decide when certain things will impact the crew of a ship. For example, a particularly violent battle that leads with a lot of crew members dying might impact the morale of the rest of the crew members, lowering the crew quality score, potentially a lot, depending on how you see things fit. Many of the rules in the Ghosts of Saltmarsh, and I highly recommend you get this book if this is something you want to run, will have kind of dice that you can roll. In a fight, you're going to roll a certain die to determine how much the quality score is lowered. On the other side, having a few days on shore, being able to do what they want, visit the pubs and whatnot, might raise the crew's quality level by a certain number as well. Where this really comes into play is when you go below 0 for a crew quality, you then run the risk of having a mutiny. How this mutiny may work is if a crew reaches the quality score of 0, the captain would then make a persuasion or intimidation check modified by the crew quality. If they roll between a 1 and a 9 total, the crew's quality score would go down by 1. If that intimidation or persuasion check is actually below 0, meaning the captain could roll a 4, for example, apply the -4 potential of a crew quality score, the crew might then mutiny, and then that would take some discipline, maybe some bribery to get them back in line and get their crew score back up to par. I know this is kind of a brief overview, but when we actually look at the rules for ships, they leave a lot to be determined by the DM. It doesn't lay out everything piece by piece like a lot of the other rules in the game would have done. So I still hope this has been helpful for you, and let me know your thoughts on crews. Is this enough information for you to run a ship-to-ship scenario? We do have another video coming up where we're going to dive into the combat of a ship and how that would work, but I hope you like this video. If you do like the video, leave a like on this one, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I would really appreciate that. If you want to come talk D&D, come join us on Discord, where we have some conversations and a whole lot of memes being thrown around. And last, if you need some miniatures for your tabletop, let me know. Check out my Etsy store in the description below. I can 3D print you up some minis and ship them to your place. And if you use the code RPGDaily10, you get 10% off your order, and all of that goes to help this channel keep going. So, I've been Richard. Thanks for watching.